like manifesting material possessions, manifesting positions of authority, stuff like that. They're definitely very useful for that. But if the positive things you want are more like knowledge or stuff like that, I'd look for more the angelic side.
In terms of manifesting, like what I mean, in other traditions, like specifically I'm thinking of more shamanistic traditions, they have concepts of like animal spirits and stuff that are invoked for power and for, you know, definitely kind of earthy manifesting kinds of stuff as opposed to the kind of angelic insights sort of stuff. But they're not associated as being evil in the same way. Like they don't have maybe they don't have the fear of it or something like that.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate.
So does that mean that though it's only because our culture fears these things that they are demons in the first place, and that we don't necessarily need to work with demons if we can get over that fear?
To an extent, that's true. But I think that like the way out is through. I find most of the time. So and you know, as much as I think we'd all love to be in this enlightened state where we don't have those kind of, we all have hang-ups. Like everyone has hang-ups, and everyone's probably going to always have hang-ups. I mean, it gets a little bit wonky after you're doing Tantra for a long time, and it's like, okay, well, I'm hung up about this, so I'm going to do it crazily until I get used to it, and then you keep reversing the polarity over and over and over again until you don't know where to go. But I think that there is some value, because it's not just, like we can personally get over these ideas of fear or difference or separation, but we're still living in a culture that kind of creates that atmosphere, and I think that just having those exist for enough people, I don't know if it's necessarily that the collective fear in those ideas gives them some kind of life or vitality. I think that's possible. But they definitely do seem to have a kind of independent awareness and self-preservation. And fear does have a sense of self-preservation. This is why I like the phrase self-aware idea. I think everyone who's ever tried to like kick a bad habit or something like that, you can see it fight back. And it will fight back. It has a awareness of itself, and it doesn't want to be destroyed. Just like anyone else would fight for their life, our anxieties fight for their lives.
Like to go with that analogy, you're trying to overcome a bad habit, or if you're trying to overcome like a phobia or something like that. Like the way to do it is not to bargain with it, and not to be like, oh well, I'll go, you know, face my fear, but then I'll reward you in some other way. You know, the way to get over it is to just like, you know, totally face it with courage and you know, enough love in your heart that you can actually like wait till it just kind of evaporates.
Well, it's a question of goals. I mean, if your goal is to overcome your fear of that idea or overcome anxiety that you have about that idea, then yes, I agree. But if your goal is to manipulate that spirit into giving you what you want, or like achieving some other material goal you have, then that's when you're bargaining, and that's when you're making deals. And I think I've mentioned this before, but I will say this again. There are some people out there, when they're talking about these things, who really say that you shouldn't bargain with them, or you should just kind of command them, and your authority should be enough. And I really advise against that, because then it's like writing the spirit a blank check, and it will cash that check in when it feels like, and will take what it feels like. So it's good to establish parameters and have everything very clear, preferably in writing. A little bit of blood on there doesn't hurt. Doesn't hurt. Like, just go classic with it. Anything that will inspire the right mindset. Yeah, and it's, you know, be sure to have a clear idea of what the thing wants before you start negotiating. And it's not really hard. It's very rare that I find that people get asked for anything too elaborate or too crazy. Pretty much the obvious things you could usually think of. Sometimes they have weird requests, but if you're comfortable doing that, then fine. But just make sure, establish before you get going that it is something you are comfortable with and that you can do.
If a spirit asks you for something simple, like, say, hanging their sigil in your temple or something like that, what would the purpose for that be? Like, what do they gain from that? I don't understand why that's like a common used example. Like,
yeah. Well, basically, what they gain from it is they gain a little bit more foothold in existence. Because they are separated from existence as we know it. They can only manifest through their names and their sigils. So that the more they're, especially their sigils, like that is a really big one. And they just like, for people, because when people see it and they focus their eyes on the lineal representation, that demon just gets a little taste of existence that it didn't have before.
So basically, it just gets juice off people that may look at it too long for.
I wouldn't say that it gets juice off. It starts to participate in their reality a little bit, and outside of that, they can't participate in reality at all. This is why some people like controlled possession, because sometimes controlled possession can in itself be a reward for the spirit. It just gets to spend a little time running around in a body, doing things, eating. I read some online stuff from a Goetic magician who used chaos magic, and what he would do is just like get a big bucket of fried chicken and invoke the demon into himself, and he could pig out on chicken and enjoy some physical sensations of the human world. And that sometimes that's just all they want and all they need. And that's why they're, as I said at the beginning, so motivated to try and prevent this kind of revelation, this kind of uniting complexes, because once that happens, they have no more foothold, they have no more existence through that person, or through reality itself, depending, once again, on what model we buy into. And they want to preserve that for as much as they can.
Then how do people end up being possessed for long periods of time if you're saying they can't really stay?
Well, first of all, I find that that's rare. A lot of the time, and this is just a model that I like to look at this with, I think a lot of the time possessing demon just moves very slowly, but it can have like a snowball effect. Like, for example, someone gets a little bit cranky for no reason apparently, because they have some kind of anxiety, something's going, whatever it is, they've got in their mind there's a fertile ground for the demon to pull a little something. Then they're maybe just shitty to someone, they elbow them out of the way of the subway, and then that kind of passes that energy onto that person. Now maybe the subway person is shitty to the guy at A&W because they fucked up their root beer or whatever, and then that moves on to the next person. And this is the way that they will take a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of foothold, and just kind of kick it, and then it becomes a snowball effect, which then causes like the larger form of damage that they want to create. Because like I said, they do exist outside of time, so they know who's interacting with who, when, and where exactly. It doesn't need to be elaborate for them to kick it off. The metaphor that I like to use is when I is coming down in an airplane over the highway, and you can see the links in the cars. You can see when one car moves in this direction and blocks something else off, it changes the whole way the lane moves. And if you're looking down on it, you can see that. You can see how it happens, and you can predict which car will be moving in what direction, where, or slower, or faster, or whatever. Whereas when you're actually in traffic, you can't see that shit at all. And that would be... That's the analogy I like to use. So I think that most of the time that's what they're doing. It's very little.
So you're saying they're in the fourth dimension, basically?
If that's what you take for outside of time, yeah. Angels are the same deal. It's what allows them to manipulate events like objects, so they can see the whole event from cause to effect as one thing. So, like I said in the. This all comes back basically to the fear idea, which is really more important than the enemy idea, and that's I think why Aiwass goes to such great lengths to try to remove the fear idea from the enemy idea, and why Sharon's is placed in the place that he is as the lurker at the threshold. And there's an important distinction I'd like to make here between fear and paranoia. And this is interesting because I think this kind of channels into the whole way these spirits get into our heads to begin with. There's two kinds of fear, and one is the kind that I don't think that we really need to be concerned about too much, which is a sense of danger when there is actually something wrong, an awareness of a problem. It's perfectly rational to have a sense of aversion to a dangerous object, a dangerous animal, a dangerous situation, a dangerous person. That's not what we're talking about as much. Paranoia is almost like pre-existing fear. It's like the state of fear itself, and it's just looking for something to be afraid of, and it will pick whatever is happening necessary. So in one instance, the cause of fear pre-exists the fear. In the other instance, the fear itself pre-exists the thing that one is afraid of.